Thank you, Kavita. Moving on to the next presentation, the research done by Shanika Jayasooriya, Balancing Act, the influence of gender and family life cycle stage on work-life balance. As mentioned earlier, Shanika is not available today. I'd like to invite Ruanli to make the presentation on her behalf.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruanli, and I had the privilege of supervising this dissertation research. And although I'm really missing Shanika today because she's right now at the airport trying to catch a flight, it's my pride and honor to present this on behalf of her. I'm not going to take too much of time, but I'm going to take you through the research and highlight the key findings from the literature, a little bit about the data collection, and the recommendations that Shanika has. It's called Balancing Acts because this research focuses on how gender and family life cycle stage influence work-life balance, which is a key and very pivotal challenge, I would say, to use that word, that causes a big wedge between male and female employees. Let's take a look. So the background to the research was the big gap that we see in women participation rate. And as Kamala mentioned, this gap not only talks of volumes in terms of employment rate, but also goes into pay and compensation, especially across the board, across the industry. But Shanika focused on the IT sector too, focusing on one particular selected organization. So before embarking on the research, the statistics that were already there were also discouraging because it was found that females, especially those who had young children, were often pushed to make impossible choices that included quitting or taking slower progressing careers. Whereas men with younger children did not have such an impact comparatively. So the research focused on males and females and also on 4 particular life cycle stages. The stages are stage 1, single, unmarried, without children. Stage 2, married, without children. Stage 3, married with children under 6 years of age. And stage 4, married with children between the ages of 6 and 18. So before embarking on the data collection, Shanika did a fabulous job with her literature review, and I'm only going to point out 2 things that really stood out here. One was what was called the time squeeze or the rush hour of life. So basically, work demands and family demands, they have kind of like a parallel, they go in parallel lines throughout life. But when it comes to particular stages, especially the stage where children are young, both demands kind of increase. So there's a little bit of a problem there. And this again, as the statistics show that impacts women a little bit more than men, or a lot more. That was one interesting literature finding. The other, Kavita again mentioned how people expect women to have kids, expect women to take care of kids. This is actually known as the gender roles strain theory, where people actually undergo pressure because of roles that society expects them to play. So when it comes to Sri Lankan culture, what was found in the literature was that society expected women to be the primary caregiver most of the time. Society expected women to make necessary sacrifices, which of course hindered career growth as well as participation rate. So this is a little bit of the literature. Sorry. So data collection was done for a little over a month, consisting of 2 studies. One was a quantitative study where Shanika focused on 45 respondents working in one selected organization in the IT sector of Sri Lanka. And also she had several interviews with employees, both male and female, representing the 4 family life cycle stages. And what was found was pretty interesting. I have just caught snippets of things that respondents mentioned. I'm not going to take you through all of that. But three things came up. One was that both males and females felt a lot of guilt, felt a lot of shame that they could not give as much time to family as they would have wanted to because of work demands. Number one. Now, a more interesting finding was that most employees who were not perhaps in a high level of leadership, most employees said that they want supportive, engaging, empathetic leaders to help them manage this. However, I will read out one quote for you. Don't want to take too much of time. By the time a person becomes a leader, they are married, they have older kids most of the time, so they have more time to prioritize. So that was a very interesting finding because employees found that their leaders were not empathetic enough because they had already reached a good level of work-life balance. That was interesting. And most of the time, who got most impacted were females who had young children. This takes me to my final slide, where I highlight the key insights and the recommendations. So when it comes to balancing work and life, what was found was that both males and females had this problem. Everyone was impacted by the excessive work demands of today. However, the group that was most impacted was family life cycle stage 3. These were women with children under 6. So these women had to, most of the time, spend about 75% of their week at work, which of course caused a lot of strain on family. And interestingly, males too underwent this strain, but for males, the strain was more on physical health. But for females, the strain was more on well-being, more on psychological well-being, which is an interesting way to think of it. And what we found from most males was that they found a lot of stress due to work demands, but females found stress due to work demands and life demands. But not everything is gloomy. Things get better when kids grow older. That was also something that they found because once you pass that threshold, once your children become slightly older, slightly mature, people actually found it easier to balance work and life, but at what cost? So this clearly shows, the research found out that yes, gender and family life cycle stage influenced how people balanced work and life, but females were trying to find that balance a little bit harder than men because they had more pressures on them. So the recommendations that Shanika included in her research was for leaders, again, focusing on the empathy angle that Kamita was talking about, for leaders not to think of a one-size-fits-all approach, but to look at more tailored approaches, not only gender-wise, but also family life cycle stage-wise, because those parallel lines, they come to a level where they're not parallel. So women need to cross that threshold without hindering their work progression, their career progression. And for this, there can be changes, there should be changes that organizations and leaders have to make. And yes, that brings me to my last slide. Thank you very much. We'll give it to Suli now. Thank you.